So Colleen, if I come to you first, I guess, what was your upbringing like? To what extent did you participate in the outdoors growing up?
Yeah, of course. So for me, I was raised by, my parents are Jamaican heritage, and my mom specifically grew up in Jamaica, moved to the UK, didn't have much of a familiarity with the outdoors, and particularly with some of the activities that I do now as an adult myself. But when I think back to my childhood, there was some encouragement to do that through the school that I attended and through teachers as well. So I was actually thinking back in coming into this conversation about how that relates to my life now. And I remember being at school, and I don't know how many people that are listening today will be aware of, obviously the Duke of Edinburgh Award, things like that I think are still in some of the schools as well. And I remember taking part in that in secondary school. And I think at the time the Prince's Trust had a bit of work that they were doing around sort of getting involved in outdoor activities. So things like orienteering. I remember that being something that we would do on school trips. And always just really having the interest in something that was so unfamiliar to me, because I hadn't had that through my upbringing. I didn't have that connection at home in terms of my parents having that interest in the outdoors. It was something that was so unfamiliar to them as well. So to actually have that experience through other people, whether it was teachers, my peer group in some respect as well. And then when I, in my early career, actually going into a workplace, and I think one of my very first memories of being in the workplace and working with some of my colleagues was doing the 24 Peaks Challenge, and that being again an introduction to being outdoors and just how much was required in terms of the knowledge and the experience to feel comfortable in that kind of space as well. So that's been something that's really shaped me in terms of having to learn that background and that knowledge, but because it wasn't something that was familiar to me through my childhood and through my parental upbringing as well.
Amazing. And you mentioned kind of your parents being from Jamaica. At the time, I guess, what are some of your reflections on what was happening economically that either contributed to a lack of potential engagement in the outdoors versus what the situation is now? Yeah,
I think there's definitely something around some of the language and the accessibility that we use. I think that in itself could be exclusive. So just in terms of familiarity of being able to go out and buy the right equipment, for example, to go and hike up a mountain, or even to just do a quite testing walk around a park can be quite challenging, just to know what do you need to buy, what kind of equipment do you need, and there's obviously a cost element to that as well. And I think for a lot of the families and people that I've spoken to over the years, it's been something that has been a barrier to accessing the outdoors. Again, with the range of accessibility to different activities. So things like kayaking, like I mentioned, and that was something that I joined through a group that's at the moment trying to establish themselves to introduce more Black and minority ethnic people to those particular activities, again, because we recognise there's a gap. And I think a lot of it has come down to the cost of access, partly down to facilities as well and the accessibility of doing that. So I think if we look at the communities, particularly in the UK, a lot of us tend to be living in inner cities. We don't necessarily have access to just go and hike up a mountain. It's not just something that's, an easy trip. So again, there's a cost of access to that in terms of being able to travel to some of the locations to do these activities.
Great stuff, thank you. And Enoch, your journey is slightly different to Colleen's. It'd be great to spend some time reflecting on your upbringing and the extent to which that contributes to what you now find joy in doing in your spare time.
Yeah, slightly different. So I think how I got into it was basically I was living in Edinburgh, and so take it back a bit. So when I was in Nigeria, I went to a boarding school, and boarding school in Nigeria was quite tough. And I did that for 6 years. And then, when I came to the UK, everything seemed quite easy, too easy, essentially, compared to my last 6 years. And then I found myself on one of the mountains in Edinburgh. There's a mountain or hill right in the middle. And that's what's quite interesting about Edinburgh specifically. There's actually a hill right basically in the middle of the city. So hiked that, got to the top, and I thought, this is actually an amazing experience. And then it just took off from there. So there was no parental, influence or family influence to me starting my outdoor journey. And what I enjoy about it, essentially, going back to that, my story around, spending 6 years in a boarding school, I thought I enjoyed the challenge that gave, that toughness, because I felt life was just too relatively simple, in my opinion. So going out there gives me the opportunity of challenging myself physically and mentally as well, especially if you're outdoors in Scotland. It's quite interesting because you're going against the wind, you're going against the cold, you're going against the rain. So last Saturday when we went hiking, it was raining most of the time. And then of course you're going against the snow sometimes. So a lot of elements are working against you. And I found that quite exciting. Maybe there's something wrong with my mental makeup. And that's basically how I got into the outdoors. And the point made, Colleen, around accessibility, I think that's really good. Around a lot of folks live in the city, getting to these places, there's a hill in Edinburgh. That's an anomaly. Normally these hills are middle of nowhere. And what we've done, at Black Scottish Adventurers, which I think is quite clever, is we've built Black Scottish Adventurers almost like a community. So for example, on Saturday, I said there were about 100 of us. We went on an adventure, but we only used about 20 cars. So what we do is, if, for example, Colin, reaches out to us, say, oh, I see you've got a trip on November 5, I'd like to come. We'll ask Colin, do you have a car? No. What city are you in? Glasgow. Thank you. Then Mark comes and says, oh, I'd like to come on a trip on November 5. And then the same questions to Mark. And Mark says, yeah, I live in Glasgow. I have a car. What we then do is we pair Mark and Colin and two or three other people that are in Glasgow, pair them up together and ask Mark kindly to please pick them up, albeit, Mark will then arrange that, okay, Colin and the rest of you, can you guys be at this very spot by 7 a.m. or whatnot? And then he goes, picks them up, brings them to the spot. And that's how we're able to shift that many people, because the reality is most people don't have transportation, and, probably, won't be able to afford it as well if they have to take a train or stay in a hotel overnight. So there are these challenges, but then I guess what myself and, maybe Colin and the Collins of this world are trying to do is, how can we start overcoming those challenges? Because those challenges will continue to remain, but then we can then start working around how can we overcome it so that more Black people or more ethnic minorities can begin to enjoy what we see as an amazing experience outdoor.
Amazing. Thank you. I guess I'm going to pause there slightly to say, if anyone does have any questions for either Enoch or Colleen, please do raise them in the chat. Alternatively, if you put up your hand, we can come to you so you can ask a question live. I guess I just wanted to reflect on some of the challenges, the barriers, the obstacles that you've both faced in engaging with the outdoors. You mentioned kind of the economic aspects. You've also mentioned kind of logistics. Have there been any other experiences that you can point to that have essentially shaped the way that you interact with the outdoors, with the environment, and also the activities that you want to do? I think I'll go to Enoch first.
Yeah, sure. So I'll give you an example. So when we started hiking, myself and my co-founder, who is actually my brother, so I'll just call him my brother, we normally go hiking with trainers, and we go hiking with jeans, and just, I guess, what we now look back on and we call silly gear, essentially. And that was quite challenging, and I guess just because we didn't know what we're supposed to wear. And then, again, hiking in Scotland makes that quite challenging. So one of the challenges we faced was just even knowing what to wear, and even things like maps, like how do you know how to get to the top of that hill, and just sort of the things you pick up over time. But then, myself and Josh decided last year that this year we're gonna go all out, that we wanted to hike more, not just hike, we wanted to enjoy the outdoors more. And I think we've been fortunate in a way, and we've been carrying people along on that, should I say, fortunate journey. Fortunate in the sense that we're quite good at using social media, or maybe Josh is good and I just sort of leverage his goodness. So whenever we go outdoors, we create what I would call amazing content. We've got a drone as well. We've got all this nice gear. So we've been doing that, and then what that has translated to is brands basically coming to us, say, oh, we love what you're doing. We'll throw some gear at you. Can you create some content for us? So between last year and now, I think I've got more gear than I need. And I've just been fortunate in that sense, in the sense that I didn't have to buy most of what I now use. So I've got waterproof, everything you can think of, I've got waterproof of it. So I can go out now without worrying about any kind of weather because I'm insulated from it. But then that does not translate to everybody else, wanting to go out in the outdoors. That these things are expensive. To get a waterproof hiking boots, for example, a really good one, you're looking at 150 to 200 quid. Not everybody can afford 150 to 200 quid. I think, myself and Colin, as I was telling you, Colin the other day, as I said, we both work in financial services, so maybe we can potentially, afford it. But then for those that are not earning as much as maybe we are, 150 is a lot. And that's one of the things we are doing, again, within Black Scottish Adventurers, is around how can we make it more affordable. So some of these brands that are coming to myself and Josh, what we're doing is, can you give us discount code for our members to use on your website? So when they go buy gear, they naturally get discount codes. There are other challenges as well, but I think I'll just leave it there for now. I'll let Colleen sort of share her experience with.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you're saying resonates with what I've experienced so far as well. And I was even just thinking about, even if we do know what equipment to go and buy. I know, for example, for myself, I was recently buying a new pair of walking boots, and I was stood in the store looking at all these different options, all these different types of different boots you can get depending upon the sole and depending upon the environment. And I was speaking to a couple of different sales reps, because even after years of being doing outdoors activities and years of doing hiking, I was still unsure about what type of footwear to buy. And even when you were talking about waterproofs, it's that type of thing where it's, it's one thing to think, oh yeah, I can go and do a walk and I've got boots, I've got some leggings, great, fine. Then there's certain climates where you'd be thinking, actually, I need to go and have a pair of waterproofs. And I think it's until you're in that space or you're having conversations with people who are in that space, which we know that that's a limited group to speak to, you don't really have that knowledge that's there to say, this is what you need to go and buy. Here's like a checklist of things that you need to do. And I think that's one of the things that I've seen has been, probably through the benefit of social media, a lot more access in terms of people having those conversations, people having those discussions as to what kind of terrain are you going to be experiencing, and then actually being able to show it in terms of the realities, because we have got video footage and drone footage that you were talking about there, Enoch, as well. That kind of access that gives people the visibility of, this is what it looks like when you're on a mountain. These are the type of elements that you might be facing, and this is the type of equipment that you might need to consider to be in that kind of environment as well. So there's obviously the cost element that I've discussed as well. The knowledge in terms of what do you actually need to buy and what do you need to be doing to be in different types of environments. So, for example, when I mentioned kayaking, that was something that's very, very new to me. In terms of, it's only this year that I actually was able to first try doing sea kayaking, and then over this weekend I was able to try kayaking on my local canal here in Birmingham. And even for that, on the day we were having so many conversations about, what do we wear to kayak? Am I going to fall in? Am I not going to fall in? What do I wear? What do I bring? I know for myself, I bought a couple of different changes of clothes in the car because I wasn't really sure what that looked like. I had a wetsuit on, all sorts of different things that I didn't know until I get there. So lots of different elements and factors to be considered to enable people to feel comfortable in that type of environment. And I think, whether it is through social media, whether it is through these kind of conversations that we're having to introduce people to feel more comfortable to be in that type of space and what that looks like as well.
And I think to add to what Colin said, apart from the cost, there's also the issue of you're alone, that aloneness side of it. So for example, if you just wake up one day and you develop an interest in the outdoors, then there's that worry of, okay, so am I going to go on a hill by myself where I can't see other folks like me and stuff like that? You're even thinking, do other folks like me even go up there? Is it safe to go up there? If I fall, what happens to me, and things like that? And I think that's why these communities that are now springing up are really important. And there's a lady that joins us from Aberdeen, and most of our adventures are normally sort of in the central belt of Scotland. So Aberdeen coming down to where we are is about 3 hours drive. And she said she's always loved hiking, but she never goes out because she thinks, I'm not going out by myself. If anything happens to me, I'm on my own, and maybe there are some weirdos up there that may want to attack me. But then when you know, she's in a group of 20, 40, 100 folks, that is not a worry anymore. So there's that spirit of that mentality of safety as well, but not just safety, because you're with a group. The group will essentially start giving you information and knowledge around, these are the things you need to bring along. So for example, I'm sure, Colleen, when you guys go on your adventures, you share, right? These are the things we think you should pack along. I mean, you don't have to do it, but these are the things you should have to make this very trip we're going on, to make it as enjoyable as possible. You maybe not have that information if you're going by yourself. And you may try to read something on the internet, but what you're reading on the internet will not be bespoke to a certain trip you're going for. So I think there's a real power in groups and sort of network.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's definitely the element of safety in numbers, and I think that's something that we do have to be very conscious of, whether in most of these spaces. But I also think just through, as we were talking about, some of the groups that have, you know, popped up in various locations around the UK, that's now giving us the access to see a lot more of those groups coming about and have that safety in numbers amongst people who look like us. You know, that, I think that's essentially what a lot of it comes back to as well, is a lot of the groups that we probably have seen over the years haven't felt that they are spaces that we can be in. And now, I think particularly in the last, I'll probably say the last 2 to 3 years, I've seen a lot more groups that are popping up, particularly here in the West Midlands. I know London has a lot of groups, as you were saying, in Scotland, you know, Enoch, that's one of the pieces of work that you're doing there as well, is being able to connect people to people who look like them and have that shared interest, to have that safety in numbers factor considered as well, so we can have other people to go and do these activities with.
And you mentioned the Enoch, I think you used the technical term weirdos, that other people that you come across in the outdoors. I guess my impression of the outdoors, again, not being an expert, is that it's largely white British middle class individuals that engage probably on a more frequent basis with the outdoors. I guess, what are your reflections, thoughts, some of the experiences that you've had engaging with I guess, quote unquote, traditional groups that dominate the outdoors?
Yeah, I won't call them weirdos. Most of them are nice people, and you know, most of them are decent people. But then what we've experienced going out as groups, so I'll give you two examples. So we normally go out as a group of, you know, mainly Black folks. We get some white folks, some you know, Asian folks joining us as well, but most of the time 80 to 90% of our group, of our trips, are Black ethnic minority folks. And when we go out, on most trips, we get grief from either folks or even those that are supposed to be looking out for us and looking after us. So for example, we arrive at a car park, you know, maybe the meetup time is 7:30, and between 7:30 and 8 o'clock, so folks begin to, you know, pull in with their cars or transportation. And within few minutes, a ranger comes and starts giving us chat around, oh, we've received some complaints. So this is 7:30 in the morning. We've received some complaints that your group is littering. And we're thinking, we've only been here for 5 minutes, and how come you received complaints? So that means we received more than one complaint. And just ridiculous stuff like that. There was one as well where we're out by the loch, like what you call lake in England, or beach. And, you know, we've been on a hike, we're down, and we're just having a nice time by the lake, you know, barbecue and stuff like that. So this is a generally open space where it's not claustrophobic, so folks can use as much space as they want. And these rangers came to us and told us, oh, we've received complaints that your group is making noise. And we're thinking, we can't make noise in a place like this. This is an open space. And, you know, then the rangers then went on to threaten us to say, if you don't turn down the music, I will have the matter will be out of my hands, essentially threatening us with the police. And yeah, a lot of folks got quite frustrated, and should I say, thankfully, we had some wise folks with us, and they basically just went and shut it down. But then those are the kind of stuff we get, and, you know, things like folks being condescending and saying, oh, we see you're enjoying the outdoors, but make sure you only leave your footprints. And that is code for you Black folks, make sure you don't leave any litter. And what I found interesting was 4 weeks ago or so, I went on another hike, this time with 90% or 95% white folks, 60 people, so big group as well. And we didn't experience any of those things. No ranger came up to us. Nobody told us to only leave our footprints. Nobody asked us if we were lost. There was none of that, none of those microaggression. Because at some point we're thinking, okay, maybe these people are giving us grief because we're a big group. But then when that happened with the big white group, I realized it wasn't because we're a big group, so just because we're Black, full stop. So we get that, but then, you know, what we want to hold on to is this is happening. And these folks, I just have to get used to seeing Black folks up on the mountains, because I can imagine, you know, for a white person who has been hiking for 40, 50 years, you know, turning up to the car park 7 o'clock in the morning and then seeing 100 Black folks, that must be disorienting. You know, that sort of messes up with their brain, like, oh crap, what's happening? And then they start doing silly things like, complaining, or even down, coming to speak to us to turn down. You know, we've got Bluetooth speaker music that will play sometimes, telling us to turn down the music. And I'm thinking, you know, we're not disturbing you. So those are some of the challenges we face. However, it doesn't bother me, and you know, the group, we try not to let it bother us. We just think these are the things that needs to happen for these guys to get used to the new norm. This is the new norm. The new norm is there are ethnic minorities that will grow. You know, the community will continue to grow. My kids will eventually go up on the mountain, and then these guys are just gonna have to get used to it. And it is essentially it is what it is. However, for the rangers, who are sort of the bodies that are supposed to be looking after this place, I think work needs to be done with these organizations. And I know that will happen naturally. I know eventually they'll reach out to us, or we'll reach out to them, and then there'll be some educational piece and stuff like that. But I think it's all baby steps, and you know, things will eventually happen over time.
Yeah, I think there was so many of the points that you made there that have been my experiences as well. I think particular point about the music that you referred to. Yeah, that's definitely been something I've experienced where we've been on a hike. As I said before, we stop off for a break, we put some music on, and it's nothing that's, you know, deafeningly loud. We're out in the middle of nowhere, and we will have people that have come past and have made comments of it being, you know, clearly we are seen to still be like we just don't belong out there. There's definitely that social commentary that exists out there as well. And I do think it is a matter of just seeing more of us out in these environments, and that they are there for us to share and enjoy. And hopefully that narrative starts to change. But I think it's definitely social dialogue that seems to be, still exists, unfortunately.
Amazing. Thank you for that. There's a couple of questions that have come through on the chat. So I'm going to go kind of in reverse order. Question from Shaheen Sutton to Enoch. Have you ever put in a complaint to the ranger organizations? Yes, is that something that you've tried to engage in terms of educating rangers on kind of the potential bias that underpins their treatment of you? Sorry, on mute.
Officially, no. No, I think that's the short answer. However, as I said, it's something that will happen eventually. It's maybe going to be driven by us, or maybe it's going to be driven by them, but that will happen very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask kind of what are there any reasons why you've not potentially put in a complaint, or is that something that just feels like too much hassle?
So myself and my brother, we've got similar background, which is we just get on with things. So maybe that's a bad thing. And I know there's a different attitude between folks like myself, and by what I mean by that is, you know, folks that grew up in maybe Africa, then moved to the UK, compared to folks that, you know, Black folks that were born in the UK. I think, you know, Black folks that were born in the UK, take less nonsense than, you know, Black folks that are born outside the UK. This is something I've observed. And we just, I guess, just let things go more than we should. So that's why we haven't, to be honest. But as I said, I think eventually we will. And as you said as well, it's just hassle, because then you've got to write an email, then there'll be back and forth. And, you know, I'm a busy guy. My brother is a busy guy as well. But I think it will eventually happen. We have seen in life, these things just take shape by themselves without necessarily you pushing it. So yeah.
Thank you. There's another comment / question from Imogen. So I've recently joined the Royal Yachting Association for the West Midlands in the hope to widen participation in boating and sailing. What key things do you think we should do to support people to get involved and feel like they belong? I'm going to direct that to Colleen.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think I was just thinking back to, why did I start getting involved in things? And I think it starts early, starts young. I'd say probably connecting with schools, connecting with colleges, and starting to probably bring groups of young people out into those environments. I think that's always a really good key way of starting to introduce people to new environments and new experiences as well. Because at that age as well, there's so much that you can do in terms of teaching about equipment, and particularly with boating. You know, I've tried boating on a couple of times, and it's complete foreign territory, but I think, you know, if you've got the benefit of starting out from a young age and introducing young people to that in particular, then I think that's a really good way of changing the narrative going forwards, and particularly as what we're discussing here today, of changing the narrative for the future, which it starts with the next generations.
Amazing. Anything to add, Enoch?
I'll just say, on top of what Colleen has said, try and make it as much fun as possible. I think it's fair to say Black folks just love to have fun, and you know, it's will be difficult to grab folks to leave the comfort of their house, especially when the weather is terrible outside, to go out. So if there's a way you can wrap your program or your trips such that when people are coming, they're thinking, I'm going to have fun, rather than I'm going on a boat, or I'm going on a hike. And I think that's something that has definitely worked for us at BSA anyway. You know, we see folks coming for their first time hike, people who have never hiked in their life, turn up, and they are just excited because they're like, I can't wait for the barbecue. They totally forget the parts that they actually have. They're gonna have to hike 500 meters up into the up on the mountain. So, and maybe this is not universal, but for us, it's definitely worked. Make it fun, wrap the day such that it's fun. I don't know what that will look like for you, but definitely, maybe if you incorporate that into whatever it is you guys are trying to build, maybe it will help you grow quicker. Because ultimately, if you think of it, you enjoy, you know, boating and going on the waters. So I think, you know, most folks will probably enjoy it as well. But how do you grab them to come try it, for them to say, oh, actually, this is fun? And I think it's by, you know, enticing them with letting them know it's going to be a fun day, rather than we're going on a boat and stuff.
Yeah. In fact, I was just going to add one thing it reminded me of, which I think was really about bringing our cultures into those environments, because it's not about us having to fit into the narrative that's already there, because those environments were not built for us. It's us taking our background, our culture with us. And it just reminded, so a few weeks ago, I joined an organisation and we did a walk up Snowdon, but it was a Rep Your Flag walk. So everybody brought their flags along, a bit like Carnival. And it was a really nice atmosphere, because it was, everybody's got their flags. And when we got to the top, we were doing pictures with our flags at the top of Snowdon. So again, just that bubble of conversation, you know, having that dynamic amongst us, that is something that's so inherent to many of us. And I'm sure just from me saying rep your flag, we know what that means. So it's that type of thing, bringing it into those environments, as you said, you know, just, you know, our culture is part of us, whether it's doing the barbecues, whether it's something that resonates with us, taking it into that space, and that's just being our complete selves.
Amazing. And I guess I'd class myself as a relative newbie when it comes to the outdoors, and I think it was only lockdown that really led to me getting out into the outdoors, because obviously we during the pandemic could only do limited number of activities, so walking was one of them. And I think from my perspective, I've seen a lot of organizations starting up in the last couple of years, trying to encourage people to get out there and to experience the outdoors. I guess, what are the things that you've seen? What are the trends that you've seen over the last couple of years in this outdoor space? Enoch, did you want to?
I was hoping Colleen would go first. I guess in Scotland, so I'll speak for Scotland, and maybe what I've seen as well. I see there's a growth in social media presence. I think social media is very powerful, because most of the folks that have come on our trips found us on social media, and when they look on our social media, all they see is, damn, see these Black people having fun outdoors. That's all they see. They forget, everything else, the hiking and the water, what's it called, paddleboarding and everything. They just think we're having fun. So I think social media has been very powerful in driving, that move. And also I think COVID as well contributed to it. During COVID, most folks were locked down. Then what you could do for fun, or maybe not fun, what you could do for recreation was basically going outside. And I think from that, more people go into the outdoors. And I think as well that post George Floyd, Black people are getting more confident and getting into that mind frame of, I can own this space as well. This space belongs to me as much as it belongs to, that gentleman over there. So there's that, that, should I call it, boldness among, among people and among the Black community to go where they won't normally go, where you probably think before that, oh, that place is for white folks, and I don't want to offend them and stuff. But now you're like, no man, like, pay my freaking taxes as well, I'm going. So I think all these sort of combination of factors is probably driving that. And definitely communities are powerful. Then, it's not just you anymore. You're going with a big group. And we expect that to continue to grow. So for example, what we are doing now, we're going as one big group, but what we see happening in the future, again, we just hope it happens naturally without us forcing it, is to have people up north in Aberdeen doing their own thing, but being part of BSA, people in Glasgow, people in Edinburgh. So we don't have to go as a big group anymore. And then by so doing, we get more people involved as well, because then Aberdeen people don't have to drive down 3 hours. They can just do their own thing, albeit supported by us in Edinburgh. So social media, George Floyd, sadly, and just groups, the formation of groups is definitely helping drive the right trend in the last few years, and will continue to do so over the next few years.
Yeah, I was going to add, I think so many of the points that you made are exactly what I would have said, in terms of, I think through social media and us actually seeing more people out there doing some of these activities, I think it's also changed some of the institutional dialogue as well around, this narrative. Those spaces are not just for us, but I think that narrative also gets into some organisations as well, in terms of Black people aren't really outdoors. I think that's something I'm seeing new, in terms of more Black models being used for modelling some of the gear that you need to be in these spaces. So some of that narrative changing from the work that people are doing in terms of being more visible on social media, forming these groups, having the reach that it allows them to have, to show that actually there is an interest there and the narrative is changing. And I think I like one of the parts you mentioned there, Enoch, about actually some of the confidence that's come in the past probably couple of years through changing, probably what I'd say is probably a bit of a generational knowledge as well, of it just being, it's just not for us. I know that's a conversation I have with my friends and family quite often, when they'll say, oh, why do you want to go for a walk? And they know that if I say I want to go for a walk, it's not, we're just not going to go to the park, it's go on, let's go down to Lickett Hills for a couple of hours. It'll be something like that. So definitely changing that narrative of it's not somewhere for us, it's actually becoming, well, actually it is, and we can go there and have a great time. And whenever we've done anything like that, it has been a great opportunity. So I think social media has definitely changed that. The conversations happening more frequently has changed the narrative as well, or starting to change the narrative. And a lot of the groups, the groups that are popping up that have been there, that are starting to establish a bit more visibility, to show that actually we have an interest there, we belong there, and we just needed to have the support and the encouragement to be there as well.
Amazing. And it's really interesting that you mentioned the kind of organizational side of things as well. Got a great comment from Tayo. Part of the problem is having national park boards and similar, they're made up of on average 68% male and white with an average age of 64, and many of whom are retired. Thus it feels that sort of feeds through to what people expect to see in the outdoors, i.e. not Black people. Can't emphasize enough the importance of representation at all levels. So is there any advice that you would give to organizations that are operating in the outdoors, that have a large outdoors focus, in terms of how best they can either support or engage or to help to drive positive change in this area?
I think, oh, there you go. I'll jump in.
You go.
I think one of the things that first came to my mind is just how serious the organisations are about understanding different communities and embracing different communities in these spaces as well. That stat of, I think you said it was at 65%. That surprises me. I actually thought that's probably lower than I expected. Actually, it was probably a higher percentage that doesn't have boards that look like us or are representative as well. But yeah, I think it's really about the organisations wanting to be serious about doing it and not just a tick box exercise to want to tick a diversity box and therefore putting us into these particular images or something that resonates with us to connect with the audience. I think it's got to be something that's got to be taken seriously, and that's when we start to see the changes within the organisation that then are played out into their marketing activity or the wider media and comms that we'll see from those organisations. It becomes the norm to see them using Black models, Asian models, whatever it may be, that connects with us, as opposed to what we've seen for many years, which has not accommodated us at all.
I think Colleen has said everything I was going to say, so nothing to add.
Yeah, I think, just to expand that question slightly, I think as I understand it, a lot of the experiences that you've had in the outdoors, bar kind of the range of experiences with individuals kind of passing comments, comments around litter, comments around noise. There are people that are keen to embrace diversity in the outdoors, aren't necessarily connected to an organization, but they actively enjoy going outdoors and seeing different people engaging. Is there anything that you, and I know Enoch, you mentioned previously positive interactions you'd had with members of the public. I think Colleen, you mentioned a couple of interactions as well. What advice would you give to allies, to people that are keen to see different communities engaging in the outdoors? Is there anything that you'd encourage them to do more of, to do less of? What would that look like?
I mean, sometimes leadership matters, and as you said, a lot of the leadership of these organizations, the board and the executives, are a certain way or certain type, and that drives what happens within these organizations. But we're already seeing change is already happening, albeit maybe slow to get to the outdoors community just because of who they mainly cater for. So I think over time, a lot of these organizations will start looking around. Our board composition is probably not right. Our executive composition is probably not right. Because apart from BSLP in Scotland, we've got other groups as well. We've got an Asian group, and the Asian group is actually split into male and female. So these groups are beginning to form, and maybe these governmental organizations will start reaching out to people like us to say, listen, we've got opportunities, board opportunities, so we can just get different voices on the board. Would you guys want to apply for some board positions? And even small things like putting signs up at regular intervals on these trails to say, remember, this trail is not just for you, it's for everyone. I think people have come to accept or to think somewhere in their head that the trail is for them. And then when you do something that goes against how they believe the trail should be used, they feel like you're violating the code, which does not exist. It's just their own code. So I think even little things like that will definitely make a difference. But as I said, this thing will happen naturally. This is the starting point or the early stages, and I think over time those conversations will be had, those changes will begin to happen, and I guess, by the time my kid is in his 20s, some of the challenges we're having now, he probably won't have it. Maybe we'll have a different challenge, but the landscape will definitely have changed by then, is what I believe.
Yeah, I think so many of the points that again there, it starts within the organisation, but the visibility, yeah, as you said, whether it's within the board, whether it's within the levels of seniority within a lot of these organisations that are connected to the spaces. If we start to see the changes there, then it's easier to take it more seriously that they are committed to change. But I think also just in terms of investment back into communities. So if we're serious about connecting with, if we talk about Black and Asian communities, for example, then it's, well, actually, if they are in predominantly more inner city locations, then connecting with those locations, giving them access to, give them some contribution and some support to actually have that knowledge and start to connect with these places. So developing investments, I don't know if that comes from grants, I don't know if that comes from communities, if it comes from councils, if these organisations, quite often have the resources to be able to put back into communities. So it's, again, doing that and taking the initiative to do that and to show that you're serious about change.
Because, adding to what Colleen said around, funding from government or local councils, there's definitely, I don't know if you would agree with me, Colleen, there's definitely a mental health side or angle to being outdoors, which, is something, well, I'll speak for my group. It's something we hear every time we go out, folks saying, coming out with you guys has definitely helped me personally, because before finding the group, I was broadly isolated. I didn't have a chance to actually be around people that understood my points. And if you're hiking or spending the whole day, because our days usually start around 7:30 in the morning, but then if you count the pickup time, so basically from 6:30 in the morning, and you're spending we finish at 5 and then drive back to wherever it is you've joined us from. So you spend about 12 hours with about 100 people. You will definitely connect. You'll have good conversations, and all that can only be good for your mental health. And then just being out in nature as well. I'm sure there's science that backs the fact that it's good for your mental health as well. So maybe this is something, or this is an angle to look at it from when approaching these organizations. The way we operate as an organization is we don't. I think we went down this approach because I'm just an accountant and I don't like relying on people for funding. So the approach we went with is, if you're coming on our trip, you pay a small fee. So that way we can just power everything. We don't rely on the council or whatnot. But then what we've been able to do over time is we've been able to raise enough to the point where we are then supporting those that can't pay, maybe those in the asylum or the refugee community, so that people are not excluded because they can't pay, because a good amount of people that come on our trip can pay. So for those that can't pay, we're still sort of supporting them. So that's the structure we've gone for. But for those that are thinking, we'd like to keep it free for everyone, then, when approaching these organizations, you can approach it from the point of view of, it's good for mental health.
Yeah, I think that's a really valuable point, because again, a lot of the conversations we'll have within the groups I've been in, it's largely around mental health. It's largely around just being able to have that connection to be able to reach out to people who are in similar situations like us and actually wanting to go and connect with the outdoors. And if I think back to the lockdown, that was where for me I started seeking out some of these groups that I could go and join to do some of these walks and to go and join activities that I had an interest in. But I didn't want to go and join organisations with people who I just didn't connect with. They just didn't look like me, don't have the interest that I do. I did try, and a couple of the groups I joined, it was just the conversations were just felt very superficial. Whereas when I'm out with the groups that, whether it's I'm leading a group or I'm joining other organisations, the conversations differ. We can talk about all sorts of things. I can definitely feel like I can be myself, and I think that's something that's important for us to be able to do in that space. So yeah, absolutely, the mental health and wellbeing factor that kicks in as a result of being able to do that. It ticks into so many other boxes that probably fall into other topics as well, about the us adapting to being in probably corporate spaces and other spaces as well. So actually having something that we can go and connect and be ourselves is a massive relief for the mental health and wellbeing side as well.
Amazing. Thank you all. I can see there's a lot of comments coming through in the chat. If you do have any questions, then please do post them there. We've got a kind of congratulatory comment from Charlotte. It says incredible. There's an incredible mountain in Ireland called Patrick. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, but there we go. The story of it is take your troubles to the top of the mountain and leave them there. The community you've built are clearly reaping and contributing to the mental health benefits of what you're doing. So congratulations. We are going to launch a short poll now as we bring this to a little bit of a close. As I said, do feel free to put any questions that you've got into the group chat, and we'll be sure to answer them. So while people engage with that poll, Colleen, Enoch, I just wanted to get your thoughts and reflections on kind of the future of the outdoor sector from a Black community's perspective. What are your hopes and aspirations, and where do you see this going over the next couple of years? And Enoch, you reflected on kind of when your son gets to kind of mid-20s, so 15 to 20 years time, what are the things that you want to see in this space?
Okay, yeah, I'm an optimistic guy, all right? So I will tell you, I think, the future is exciting, the future is bright. And I think we're already laying the foundation for that to happen. Some did things in the 60s and 70s for us to enjoy what we're enjoying now. So we are laying the foundation for a better future for our children, or for younger folks and folks still coming to this country. And I think I see more investment or more funding coming into this space as well. So some of the conversations we're having with some of the brands we work with, we're already seeing some positive movements in that space. Again, we are now in a space of ESG. You're not just in business to make profits, you need to do good in the world. So it's around, how do we Black communities access these organizations to pull some money out from there? Because it's a win-win for both organizations. So I see that there's more of that happening in the coming months and years. A company like Patagonia. So Patagonia, I don't know if you saw in the news where the founder of Patagonia basically gave the company away, something like that, because he wanted the company to just do good. So when I saw that news, I think it was George that saw it. He sent the link to me and he said, money is coming our way. Because these guys are not willing to spend more money, so we need to make sure some of that money comes our way so that we can support our community. So I definitely see more funding coming, and then with all the drive that is happening in our community to get people out, I think there will be that combination where there's more funding coming, and then there's more people interested, and then we'll start reducing some of that financial exclusion where people can't go just because some of those things are just pretty damn expensive. That's where I see the future going. Definitely exciting. More people are going to get into the outdoors, and more people are going to reconnect to the outdoors, because some of those that come on our trip, they used to go to the outdoors in their earlier age, and now they got disconnected just because of life, and now we see them coming back. We've got women, Black women in their 50s and 60s, and that's not a joke, actually coming back into the outdoors to hike with us and saying, I can't believe I've lost this for the last 30 years. So we'll see more people reconnecting as well. So exciting times ahead is what I say.
Amazing. Colleen?
Yeah, absolutely agree. I was trying to think if there's anything more that I would add, but I think a large part of it is around, the next generations being introduced to this as soon as possible. Having that early introduction to the outdoors, I think, is key. And obviously then it changes for, whether it's investments, whether it's looking at how to get them to connect to the outdoors and making it fun, making it something they can engage with. But absolutely, a lot of the points that Enoch made, completely agree.
Great. So thank you so much, both of you, for engaging. For those of us that want to know more, Enoch, where can we find our Black Scottish adventurers?
Oh, sorry, I missed that.
Sorry, where can we find more? Where can we?
So we're currently building a website. So hopefully by the time we finish building, folks can register and get newsletter and stuff like that. But currently we're very active on all the social media outlets: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and LinkedIn. But so you can connect with us on there. You can send us a message on there. You can even just go visit our pages just to see what we've been up to over the last year. So yeah.
Amazing. Colleen, is there anyone that you wanted to shout out, or if people wanted to connect with you, are they free to do so?
Yeah, I'm happy for people to connect, and then I'm happy to also direct people to organisations as well. There's a group that I lead some walks with. There's other groups that are dotted around as well. So yeah, there's definitely a few names that come to mind that I'm happy to point directions to. But my main profile, I say for this, is Instagram, which my name on there at the moment is Adlib Traveller, which is all as one word, Adlib Traveller. So yeah, happy for anyone to reach out if they want to get any further details about organisations and groups that I can put them direction to as well.
Fantastic. And as I said, this is the first instalment in our Black Futures Month series of webinars. Please do check out the website at www.theequalgroup.com for more information. Sign up to the rest of the series. We will have speakers across financial services, Black women in leadership, a number of other engaging topics. So please do keep engaged with our social media channels at The Equal Group everywhere. Thank you once again to Enoch and Colleen. It's been a really great conversation. I'm keen to get out there and explore the mountains. Enoch, I will drop you a message to connect with you in Scotland.
Yeah, let me know when you're coming to Scotland. I would definitely love to vibe with you up here.
Absolutely. And Colleen, I'm sure we'll connect on the Birmingham circuit as well. Thank you all for engaging. I wish you all the best for the rest of the day and the rest of the week. Speak soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.